Okay, right off the bat, I'm doing this in public, so like and subscribe just on that. But basically, TikTok has become obsessed with another camera, the G7X Mark III. Some of them are selling for upwards of $1,500, which is insane considering how bad of a camera this was. I originally recorded the intro to this at my desk, but it just ended up being 5 minutes of me telling people why the G7X Mark III is absolute garbage. So if you want to see that video, let me know in the comments below. I have a lot to say about it. But for this one, I know exactly where the trend is going. I know what TikTok's next camera obsession is. And spoiler alert, it's this one, the Canon G1X Mark III. A camera that really didn't get a lot of love when it first came out because we consider the $1,300 marker for an APS-C point and shoot to be kind of expensive. But I mean, if you look at the landscape nowadays, it was a steal back then, and it's even more of a steal now because you can pick up a used one somewhere between $600 to $700 USD. And that's until someone makes it go viral on TikTok. So if you got one sitting on the shelf, get ready to sell if you don't want to use it. Or if you're looking to get the new IT camera, can't find an X100 Mark V or 6, you can't find a G7X Mark III, which again, please do not spend any money on that camera. Again, I'll go on a rant. The G7X Mark II, if you can find one at a normal price, go ahead. But even those are selling for almost $1,000 online. Now, I will go over video on this thing. Most online video nowadays that people consume is in 720p or 1080p as it is. I will shoot this in 1080p, which is what it does, the highest resolution it shoots. You'll see that after it gets put through YouTube's compression algorithms, it kind of almost looks exactly the same as 4K footage. But all in all, great video tool. Lack of a microphone, I'll go over that a little later as well. But while I'm here, I'm gonna go into the photo capabilities of this with a friend of mine. She'll be here shortly. But the G1X Mark III is essentially a Canon 80D. Now, I kicked off my professional career with a Canon 70D. This one has an 80D sensor inside. It's got essentially what is a better than average kit lens attached to it. And it's an APS-C sensor, which makes a pretty big difference. It's almost 3 times larger than the 1-inch sensor in the G7X Mark III. I'm gonna keep saying that. I don't know how the G7X Mark III won out over like the RX 100 Mark VII or anything like that, which is probably worth another video, but I am gonna get distracted. And this is a problem when I don't have a script. I yap a lot. Aside from that, big features is that it has this on-camera flash, but it also has a hot shoe. And this is going to be a theme today because I was going to do a photo shoot using just a speed light. I do shoot on a pair of Canon R5Cs, mostly video. But why I think this is just, not I think, it's factual. It's a better camera than most other point and shoots out there, including the super popular ones, specifically when it comes to photo, but in all honesty, video too, because none of them have this thing here. Sorry, I'm shooting this on my phone and I keep forgetting the camera's right here. Also, I built out a very inconvenient rig just so I can take you along on this photo shoot, and I think you should like and subscribe just for that. Let me show you what it looks like. And here is the full rig. Links to everything in the description below, but 360 camera, so you see the environment. A Ninja 5, and the only reason I have the Ninja 5 is I normally have an Axoon Simo, but I did the firmware update right before this and it just stopped working. I messaged them, they didn't have a phone number, so that's kind of a bust. It's just another reason why I hate any accessories or any pieces of equipment that are tied to your phone. You know, someone should make a 3-inch recorder. So today I'm just gonna be using the Ninja 5. And this is my Godox trigger. I'm not going to take every photo with the strobe, just like so everyone knows, but I like photography and I like better portraits, and I do like having like a decent amount of fill light when possible, so I'm gonna do this today. You can actually, you don't have to, if you were someone who was getting started and you had this camera, you don't have to get an AD400. You can literally use any on-camera strobe and use any diffuser from there. If you wanna see a video with that setup, which is infinitely more portable and actually a lot easier to move around with, let me know in the comments below. And I think that's her, actually right there. I finished the photo shoot and I finished editing Maica's pics, but I just wanted to preface this by saying that this is the first video I've ever edited in Resolve, and I had to go to Resolve. I actually have a backlog of maybe 5 or 6 videos that I've shot that I just can't edit in Premiere because it will not stop crashing. I do the little 360 video so everyone sees the environment we're in. And by the way, let me know if that's even contributing anything for you when it comes to any of these videos. And then the screen recording, and for whatever reason, Premiere just will not stop crashing. I edit on a Razer Blade 16, it's got the 14th gen i9 chip, 96 gigabytes RAM, a 4090 card, so like it's definitely not the technology, it's not the hardware, it's the software, 1000%. Adobe Max is in a couple of months. I really would love to hear that Adobe focused on stability and maybe rebuilding Premiere from the ground up instead of adding more and more features that causes it to be unstable. Just wanted to say that before I got into the edit in case something was a little off by the time I uploaded this, because I'm just learning as I go at this point. I'm 38 years old. I don't like learning new software. I've held out for quite some time, but it's finally gotten to the point where even I can't ignore it. So full speed ahead. Shameful stuff, but let's get into the photo shoot. So this is the first time we met in person. She's a makeup artist, phenomenal one. She did the makeup for a mutual of ours, Victoria, who you're gonna see in 2 other videos on the Canon 24-105 2.8 and the Fuji 50F1. And I just wanna walk you through, let me pause it right here. Let me walk you through my editing process because it's just autopilot these days, and the majority of this you can do in apps, on phone apps, no problem. Here, what we're looking at right here, this is the base edit. This is straight out of camera. Honestly, it looks really good. Now, I personally have a strong bias to Fuji JPEGs, but the Canon colors, they're great. Canon colors have always been really good. There's a reason why I started off on Canon. There's a reason why I still shoot all of my pro video and cover events on Canon cameras, the R5C. But also, at the same time, I do have a very bad habit of maybe just editing too often just because I'm accustomed to it, even though a photo like this, looking at it now, maybe I should have just left it as is, but here's what I did. But I'm just going to talk through everything. So here's the base photo, unaltered. Maybe I did some shadows and highlights or something upon import, but moving forward, saturated the reds just a little bit on her lips because it did dull them down. And then you see that you just have to mask off the subject and use like a radial blur to make like believable bokeh behind a person. And this camera, you have to keep in mind, it is at the telephoto end a 5.6. 5.6, not really like a super shallow depth of field when you're at 70mm, 72 on this one. But I still prefer overshooting like a faster but wider lens, taking portraits that way. I'm just personally not a fan of the aesthetic, and I do like how it flattens subjects the further out you go. So I just added a little bit of background blur, and I did that I think on most of the photos in this video. I'll shout out the 1 or 2 that I didn't. This one, just add some lens flares, stylized edits. I like stylized edits. She likes stylized edits too. And sometimes that does help with the depth of field just a little bit, especially if you're working against something a little more flat than you're accustomed to. So you're really just going to see the edited photos. Nothing is done too crazy, and the majority of it is going to be through adjusting exposure, shadow, highlights. That's just full disclosure. You're able to do a lot of this in the Lightroom mobile app. You don't even have to import them to a desktop or laptop to do your edits. Probably should have mentioned this at some other point in the video, but I feel like a lot of people don't know. SD card reader, you plug it into your phone, you plug in your SD card, you can load the RAWs directly to your phone. You don't have to worry about the Wi-Fi connection. You don't get stuck with just JPEGs, although I think Fuji just updated their firmware, so they're the first company other than Ricoh or anyone with DNG RAWs that actually transfers over their proprietary RAWs so you can finally edit them on camera. But the SD card reader, 1,000 times faster. It costs like $7. I'll put a link to that and everything else I was using in this video in the description below. Very streamlined process, and like I said, these edits, nothing crazy about them. You can definitely do them on your phone. If I were going to sit there painting highlights and shadows, it'd probably be a different video. With that being said, let's move forward. This started coming back to me because I haven't shot on my 70D in a very long time. I still have the camera, and I forgot how good dual pixel autofocus was. Still better than most autofocus systems. This is a really high dynamic range shot. That was really more of a showcase, just so you see that. Backlit shot. This is also a really high dynamic range shot. You can see in the screen recorder what it was, and that was a shot I didn't use a strobe on, by the way. I do have the strobe. Sometimes I use it, a lot of times I don't. If you do want to see a different setup, or if you want to see another video to see what it can do with just the camera, you don't want any kind of accessory flash, let me know in the comments below, and I'll see if someone else is up for doing another photo shoot video. All that was recovered from the image that you saw in the screen recorder without issue whatsoever. And don't be afraid to pump up the ISO. A lot of these editors these days have great noise reduction tools, but I didn't really have to use them for anything here. She did a bunch of repeating patterns, which was really helpful and something I've never done with someone before in a collab shoot. So I like shots like this. This wasn't like the best, and I don't know why I wasn't screen recording this time. This wasn't the best placement of it, but I did want an example again of that high dynamic range. You can get those artsy shadow shots. Really just a lot of fun with a camera like this. So this camera goes up to 1/2000th of a second, which is a lot lower than what most people are used to these days, but it does have a 2-stop ND filter built in that I didn't have to resort to. Otherwise you have to stop it up or use, it's got a 37mm filter thread. and you just screw on a filter. Let me pause that here. The detail, phenomenal here. What I was able to do with the colors, like it's an old format. CR2's old raw format, but they've been used for so long for a reason. They're still incredibly flexible. I like environmental portraits, things like this. And this is an example of when the shallow depth of field really doesn't matter as much, because when you're taking portraits, like environmental portraits like this, or you're doing a bunch of street photography or landscape, you're typically at f8, f10 or higher. This is a reasonably sharp lens, and it's a zoom lens on top of that. For that reason, it beats out for me the likes of the X100V, the Ricoh, all that, because you still have 2.8 at the wider end, which matches the Ricoh. Camera is still very pocketable, like I said. The only camera smaller than this in this category is the Ricoh GR3 and 3X. All the others, not really. Even the Sony, if you manage to find one at a reasonable price, the RX1R and stuff, it's a size of kind of the ZV-1. Never owned one of those myself, but it has a big lens protruding. It's a really cool camera. I wouldn't be surprised if they released a successor to it in the coming year. But we're going off tangent. Let's go finish off this photo shoot. At this point, I was more comfortable with the camera. We figured out a dynamic as well. I got some feedback from her while we were on site on the types of shots she liked. And so this ended up being like a really good photo. The skin tones, Canon, they always did a really good job. That's why the G7X was always just a step ahead for some people who didn't really edit photos over the RX100 5 from Sony. Another shot, same deal. I probably could have gotten a little higher on that one. I'm a sports photographer, so I always like motion, and she was all about motion. So maybe at some point, I'll have her with the 200 f2 long-term review video on my Fuji. Obviously, the area around us is very blue. I put a lot of orange in the shadows to kind of get around that and give us more of a golden hour vibe, since the sun was setting on the other side of the building there. Didn't modify the blur in the background on this last shot, only because I actually forgot, but I wanted to leave one particular example up there so you saw what you were working with. That's it for the shoot. It's pretty clear that this is a very, very, very capable camera. It's infinitely better than the insanely overpriced G7X Mark III. I hate that camera with a passion because it was a huge disappointment. I was really looking forward to it when it came out, and then it overheated when I was shooting in 4K in about 3 minutes. You may as well just aim for a G7X2 if you just want something for photos, because the autofocus was also trash on it, but that's a whole other video. The key highlights, again, are that this is an APS-C sensor camera. It is weather sealed, right from factory. I don't know if you can see it, but I'm really like on top of the lens, there's like this, almost like this built-in plate thing. That must be why it's weather sealed. And this is the only point-and-shoot camera from factory, other than like the Olympus Tough that nobody cares about, that is weather sealed from factory. It, of course, has fully articulating screen. Video quality on this is really good, but Canon, in like standard Canon fashion, they just do not want to innovate. And everyone was shocked when this came out and it didn't have a mic jack. I think they would have dominated the point and shoot market had they put a mic jack in this, and the landscape would look very differently nowadays, but that's on their sales org or buying team. I'm sure marketing kind of like slammed their head against the desk when they heard that it wasn't going to get a mic jack. And you know what, for this outro, I'm going to switch to video on this. So actually, before I close this, you can do film sims on this camera and all other cameras. On Canon, they're called picture styles, and I uploaded the old, for anyone, this is showing my age right now, the old Technicolor CineStyle. And I don't know if anyone remembers, or if you were even into the Marvel like film stock look back in the day. I have both of them here. The CineStyle is like a flat profile, which actually does come in super handy for photos as well, but you can't get log. Back with the 70D and the 80D, you couldn't get log in their cameras. I think only the 5D4, if I'm not mistaken, eventually got log. When it came to the EF mount hybrid cameras, like all the C100s and stuff, they're the ones that had the log profiles. And the 1DC. The 1DC, which don't buy that nowadays, but it was pretty cool at the time. So everyone had their own recipe to get as much dynamic range. It was like a fake log. Obviously, this is 8-bit video. That was 8-bit video back in the day. But what it did allow you to do was control the saturation and contrast better, so you could at least achieve some kind of look. And it was pretty handy. It's what I used most of the time after learning what color grades were, and putting out more than a few videos when I first got started with LUTs, when I first learned what LUTs were, and oof, those were dark times. Also, because there's no mic jack, I will give you like onboard samples so you hear what I guess this area sounds like right now with the AC blasting. And then I'm also gonna switch back to my microphone right here. Syncing audio, and this is kind of why like it's not a deal breaker these days if you want to buy this for video too. It is limited to 1080p, but larger sensor, upscaling, compression, can't tell the difference. That's a whole other video as well if you want to hear about it with 1080p cameras in general. But it's very easy to sync audio these days. It used to be very difficult. Now it's like a 2-click procedure. I don't think anything does that on the phone, but pretty much any editing software and some web apps nowadays will just sync your audio. You don't even need a microphone like the DJI Wireless 2 here. You can literally have like your phone and just stick a lav in it and record there, and then it'll sync perfectly. So just want to bring that up because I know a lot of people are looking at these cameras for photos nowadays, but in case you are also looking for something to potentially be like a video machine for you as well, a video capture device, you will have to take that extra step here. It will take better photos, but maybe you'd be better suited to something like this for that kind of workflow. Okay, let me pop this on. Okay, so this is about as wide as it gets. I was on the Fuji, where's this thing? Oh God. My XH2S and the 1024 earlier. So, and this camera again, it's a 24 to 72 millimeters. So this is the widest end right here, 24 millimeters, which is actually pretty decent. It's pretty decent. It's actually wider than the ZV-1 that claims to be 24 millimeters, but it's at closer to like 27. So keep that in mind. And you can see that the bokeh over here at 2.8, it looks really good. As a video tool, personally, I think it's great. Here's what the audio sounds like right now in the room without the microphone. So you can hear I have like the AC blasting, and then there's going to be a lot of reverb because I'm like by a wall and everything. So that's kind of like the downside of this. I still can't believe they didn't put a mic jack in this. But like I said, it's really easy if you go in and you want to sync using this thing here or whatever other audio capture device you're using, a body pack, your phone. It's not difficult to do, and you could just go about doing that if you want to shoot video, YouTube content as a secondary feature maybe to having a really good photo camera that's also weather sealed. I feel like that's a huge deal. The only reason I sold my Ricoh was because it wasn't weather sealed. And with that being said, that is effectively the end of this video. Thanks for sticking through. End of this video, but maybe not necessarily the end of me making videos on this camera. If you have any particular questions about it, if you want to see another photo shoot with this camera, I'm pretty sure I could talk someone into it. So I did just kind of move to Jersey, and I don't know a lot of parks and stuff, but if someone wants to see like landscape or cityscapes or something along those lines, that'll probably force me to step out for a little bit. And I personally think this camera in particular is better suited than most of these other point and shoots because of A, gonna say it every time, weather sealing, huge point. Stop releasing cameras without weather sealing, please. And B, this camera really doesn't draw a lot of attention. I feel like it makes you look like a very old person walking around with your little Digicam point and shoot, which is honestly phenomenal when you're trying to go under the radar or just not draw a lot of attention regardless of where you are. So that's another reason why I'd recommend this camera, is that it's not sexy at all. Which, like, you know, if you're looking to make a fashion statement, you got to do the X105 or 6, maybe a Leica if you got the disposable income, but I don't. And if you do, let me know if you're hiring. And now that is the end of this video, and this is the tiny this is the tiny lens cap that it comes with. Let me see if I can actually place this on properly for like a good exit. It's not, maybe this is like a downside too. Yeah, that didn't work out. Yeah, we're done here. Catch you guys later.